Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. First, we have approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, do we have motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Next, we have an interview with our school board candidate, Mr. Michael Cummings. Welcome, and we want to thank you for stepping up and volunteering to serve the city in this capacity. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
First, we will invite you to make introductory remarks for 3 minutes. After that, we'll probably have time for 2 rounds of questions that the governing body will ask you, and then 3 minutes for closing remarks. So if you want to start out with your opening remarks, Mr. Cummings.
Well, why, thank you. So what brought me to the table was,
Is your microphone turned on?
is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
much better.
So
Thank
what
you.
brought me to the table was just a general newsletter that Ms. Rochelle sends out. I saw that we had an applicant opening, so I figured my experience would be a very interesting fit. My administrators current administrators at Woodbridge Middle School, I do work for Prince William County. I do want to make that clear. They have actually been asking me, why don't you go into administration? Why don't you go into administration? It wasn't the first time that people have asked me that. Quite honestly, I didn't want to do the graduate level work. But ironically, I'm now here. So I look at what happens with the school board. A lot of it's budgeting, setting policy, respecting what is the laid out expectations, following the rules of the order, and also understanding that what is behind closed doors stays behind closed doors, and until it brings out into a public meeting such as this. That applicant needs to be clear of what the expectations are. Essentially, when you're behind closed doors, it's like a clearance, essentially. So that needs to be maintained. An applicant also needs to understand what goes on in a school on a daily basis. I have a rather eclectic experience in so many different areas. I've been in some of the richest parts of the county teaching students with severe disabilities. I've been in DC public schools teaching incarcerated youth. I have been in Prince William County for 5 years. I've also done Job Corps working with adults who are going for that VOTEC educational experience. My expertise is in curriculum development, which I have developed curriculum for some small schools, the charter schools in DC, specifically those that didn't have a driver's ed program. That was one of my tasks at Job Corps, and I was able to follow that to Idea Public Charter Schools before I went to the Prince William. So what Manassas Park City needs is someone who can step up, that is not afraid to speak out, and also, quite frankly, is willing to do the job. I have seen, as a resident of 10 years, the struggle to get even council people, like you get yourselves. Sometimes, I look at the amount of people that have even applied, and we're looking at exactly the amount of seats that need to be filled. So those who are willing to even step forward in Manassas Park, well, quite honestly, they're few and far between. But those who have done a really good job, at least in my opinion. Especially looking at the school board version, how the budget has been balanced and had some excess over the past few years. That is a very, very difficult aspect to maintain, especially to be able to have carryover. And in order to compete with the neighboring counties, Fairfax, Prince William, all loud and throw it out there. They're losing teachers a lot of times, and it comes down to pay 100%. And I understand that, living that battle day to day. That said, as a resident of Manassas Park, I want to see my kids keep some awesome teachers. My daughter's currently in Cougar Elementary, and she loves her teacher, and we like her too. Yep.
Timekeeper says that your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, okay. I can go for another 3, I promise you.
Okay, we'll
Sorry.
move into Q&A time, and we will start with Councilmember Javed with the first question. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for attending today and making an application. I guess one of your priorities was to exceed assessment expectations at the state level. Name an example. How would you go about doing so, and what would some of your ideas be?
Getting the state standard scores up is not an easy task. Quite honestly, what works for some of the other schools around us does not always work for Manassas Park, because we are a Title I school, and there's a lot of extra challenges that go with it. So my question is, what other resources do we use to help answer our question? I'm not afraid to look at other resources and pull ideas from other successful programs that are gaining traction. A lot of the discrepancy comes with the ESOL students, where, quite honestly, they don't always understand what is being asked of them on that state exam. So my question, one of the things that I would really like to do and really push for is to try to pull applicants that have a whether it's a dual certification or a natural dual language that can, I know they can't translate on the actual assessment, but but during classroom time, able to give more support and not just rely on an ESOL department. It is not an easy task, and it's something that I actually struggle with every day in class. So I get it.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Cummings, for applying to join our school board. As you said, it's important to be willing to step up and to participate in these civic obligations and responsibilities, so I applaud you for that. In your response to diversity in the school district and the teaching staff, I appreciate your answer, but I would like you just to elaborate publicly your comment that diversity of a teaching staff could also be detrimental. And just
Absolutely.
just expand upon that and
Absolutely.
flesh that out a little bit for me, Mr. Cummings.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you asked that, so I can have an opportunity to explain it. I might have accidentally on purpose put that in there, so we could, so I could make this public.
Caught my eye.
So what is diversity in a classroom isn't always black, white, LGBTQ, straight, whatever. It also includes the ability to be able to speak languages. On top of, is that person actually qualified to be there? Just because they have a piece of paper, that might catch our eye to bring them in as an interview candidate. But can they handle the actual challenges that are in day to day? So I have seen a lot of students flourish and flounder under people who can't do the job. Some people do a really great job of learning how to do that, and I'm looking at diversity as in terms of like being able to speak and actually be able to perform the function of the job. I don't care what you look like and who you are outside of clearly the background clearances are appropriate and such. And let's just make sure that that's clear. But who you are is and how you connect with our students so that they can learn is my top priority. Does that add questions or?
Well, yeah, no, it does flesh it out a little bit, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to know how you felt about people who have a feeling that they want someone to teach who looks like them, who could represent them and encourage them, who have the same kind of cultural backgrounds that they come from or understand.
That's going with the connection. And quite honestly, that's where, yes, having a multicultural teaching staff does play a role. It really does. But it comes down to, can they do the job? And part of that job is doing, whether we like it or not, teachers are mentors, right? That's just part of what we do. And part of that is we see students and we have to take them under the wing, whether they like it or not. And that's exactly what I tell my kids. I'm like, you don't have a choice in this matter. Because, and it also gives them an opportunity to see past what cultural barriers that may have been brought up whether it's from them being raised or experiences, but also it gives them an opportunity as you said, to connect with people of a similar culture, so that they can learn how to function in a very eclectic world. Manassas Park is really interesting because there's so much diversity in our just little community. So again, it goes to both, especially having not only the qualifications, but being able to do the job. And if you really want to say it, yes, sometimes being able to just visually connect with somebody does help break down at least a few barriers so they can begin that connection of mentorship.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
You're welcome. Did that help?
It did.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for stepping up and applying. I saw that you were a social studies teacher and you also do curriculum creation. My question is, what is your opinion of the growing controversy over what to include when we teach history?
Yeah, that's a fun one. So what we teach history is not always done by the books, and there's a reason. We have primary sources, we have secondary sources. First, when it comes to, let's go with, I don't know, I can't even put a year on it. Using as many primary sources as possible. How about that? That's where a lot of historical analysis needs to take place. That also goes with supporting the SOL standards of reading and writing and whatnot. So there's always that beautiful little connection. But in connection with what's going on with just the general climate of today, it does get sketchy. We look and see what's happening in Loudoun County, and I know Manassas Park does not want to be what's happening in Loudoun County, and even Fairfax. So a lot of it comes down to just being a moderate and looking at human beings, being a person. Don't push one thing over another. Let the students decide who they want to be. There's going to be mentors of that nature regardless, it's just because it's human nature. It's what we do. So by not pushing, it also does not open us up for lawsuits. Yes.
Okay. My question is, I'd like to follow up on what Councilmember Moore has asked regarding diversity. How do you view diversity of thought and diversity of speech? Do you agree with tolerance of differences of opinion as long as we sit down and discuss them like in a mature manner and avoid name calling, for example? How do you feel about that?
The way you just framed that was a beautiful take. Beautiful. Because being able to open to a discussion is just one of the first parts of humanity. It's what we have to be able to communicate and have that back and forth in order to understand where each other come from. If we don't trade that opportunity to listen, because that's what we teach our kids at home, and for those of us that have young ones, to listen, to react. Where nothing's going to ever get done, okay? Whether it's learning, whether it's a social emotional opportunity, whether just even on the playground. He said, she said, if you got emotions running high, that having that third voice of a teacher, or it even could be a friend at the higher grade levels, to sit down and show that social emotional learning is a beautiful thing. That directly applies to what we do, whether we're on one side or have one set of beliefs or another. If we can't talk about them and we can't have a conversation about it, what good are we going to do for anything?
Because some ideas are not at all popular, but when we stop to think about what the First Amendment means to us, it was not written for the ideas that everybody can agree upon. It was written for dissent. So that's why I'm asking you. Not everyone is going to agree on everything.
And that, honestly, that's to be expected. Okay. If I didn't get a disagree, I wouldn't have to think about whatever my position was even more deeply.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a high schooler, and he's only seen his counselor twice in his high school career. How do you plan, or what do you think would be a solution to have counselors talk to your high schoolers starting high school so they can plan their high school career a little better?
That is a beautiful question. I'm glad you brought that up, quite honestly, because that problem is not just systemic to your child, it's systemic in many other situations. I'm going to pose multiple points of view on this one. From the counselor position, and many times they're overwhelmed. They have so many students that they need to service, set schedules for, and then you also have students that have high needs with emotion, whether it's emotions or let's say there's a family issue and the social worker does need assistance, on down the list, and that takes up very valuable time. Now, on the other side, I'm going to open a question up. Would hiring another counselor or leaving room into a budget for another counselor be an option? That's something that would have to be discussed, because there could be a lot of situations where, yes, that might help alleviate many students who might see that same exact thing. They might be able to see their counselor more often. On the other side, I personally encourage my students to go meet with their counselors as much as possible, whether it's for like a social emotional event that may have happened, or just learning the scheduling and learning how to schedule and life planning. Now, one of the downsides of not having worked in Manassas Park is I don't know what the curriculum and the expectations are of the counselors, because they vary county to county, city to city. Could there be a policy put in place to ensure that at least students see their counselors twice, 2-3 times a year, whether it's for a check-in or what? It could be an option. But you have to see what the overall big picture is. I want to make sure all students get serviced appropriately to what their needs are. Some will need higher needs with their counselor, some will not. But that is a great point that I don't know that I can give a specific answer out, but I can definitely brainstorm other ways to kind of get that support. And I hope your son is able to get more support in that manner as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I appreciate you applying and you being here today. I have just a quick question. My kids, I have twins, they're in 8th grade. They've gone through the system since kindergarten, and surveying a lot of the teachers and the staff, I've noticed probably about a third of parents on back-to-school night during teacher conferences don't even attend. How can you engage the community and reach out to get those parents more involved in their children's lives? Because we understand everybody has, you always have a percentage of that, but what outreach can you do to, engage those parents to be more involved?
That's a great question. Is there room in the budget to look? What's the number one thing that draws people? Food. Come on, a free meal. Work with me here. Is there room in the budget to provide, let's say, like some pizza and some water, or pizza and some whatever's available for that particular night for the community members? Maybe. Could it be done? Is there room in the budget to maybe have cafeterias workers stay that day to help prepare it to save a little bit of cost from having to order out? Could be an option. There's so many different ways. I do need to make a point to say Manassas Park City is not the only one. The school that I work at, out of 900 students, we had 100 participate. So I understand the struggle. Also, how does it work with advertising the upcoming stuff? Is it just email? Is it just, I know we get tons of text messages. It's pretty well advertised. We get robocalls. My daughter's in kindergarten. We get a lot. But coming up, that would also be something to meet with and talk with, not teachers as well. What do they see? What do they see in classroom? What do they see that would work? The ideal attendance is 100%. That's the ideal attendance. But getting up to 80% is a logical goal. From what, 66 to 80%. Whether it's a year or two, attempt to apply a couple of different small ideas to engage or encourage the community to come out. Could it be, instead of just holding it just at the school, could it be, summer at school, or maybe we have something at a park at Signal Hill? Could it be also wrap it in with another fun family game night to get in here? I'm just throwing ideas out on the table. But ideas are what help solve problems.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
My question has to deal with the balancing your daily job, which is more of a practitioner, with now the job as a school board, which is more at an executive level, and having that firewall between the two. So can you explain to me how you envision setting place that firewall, so that when you're at Manassas Park School Board, you're thinking as an executive, but when you're a day job, you're thinking as a practitioner?
That's a beautiful question. So that a lot of times that's really learned. It took me time from my daily job to learn how to leave it at my daily job, so that way when I was at home, I could focus to learn and focus at home. That is a lesson that directly applies to being a school board member, and then also separating home life and board life, and then also my daily job. So looking at it, again, it comes down to making sure that confidentiality is maintained. It also goes to make sure that, I'd have a feeling that once my colleagues found out what I have done, because I haven't told anybody outside of my direct superiors, that they're going to come to me with all these questions. There's a firewall. I don't have answers for you because that's not my department. This is not what happens here is what happens here. What happens in Manassas Park City stays in Manassas Park City. It has to deal directly with them and our constituents and the students. So that not only is it learned, but it needs to be built right off the bat. And I think having learned how to separate my home and job will become a key player in learning in that separation of work to us as a school board member.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll go back for one more round. Councilmember Javed?
I guess, the COVID pandemic changed a lot of ways teachers teach and students learn. Besides that point, coming out of it, how would, the board, how would you, there's a lot of talk about supporting the kids, but how would you support mental health in teachers, right? They've been going through a lot during that time, and then political stuff as well. But so how would you support their mental health and in hopes of retaining teachers, that this is a place to work compared to other places?
That is a beautiful question. I know I've said it a couple of different times, but that's actually something that a lot of my colleagues battle on a daily basis. One thing that I've seen pick up, and I don't quite know exactly how the layout of each school is and if there's even room, but something that has worked really well to bring up some staff morale is kind of their own SEL room, which might include a lounge chair or two where they can actually engage into a conversation that's not just professional, right? Not too deep, but hey, what'd you do on vacation? We have been lucky that we even got a couple massage chairs. I know that that's not cheap, but federal grants paid for that, and so the use of the federal grants and those opportunities would be a way to compensate for and not mess with the budget. And also, as a staff, we are asked to pay like $20 per year for some of those niceties. Like, for example, a yogurt bar. Make sure you hit dietary needs. If there's a dietary restriction, you have a little bit of extra to be able to take care and meet those needs. And that just, it's a lot of times it's the little things that keep people happy and keep people there. Yeah, and the other thing that I'd see a lot of is the school board in other counties doesn't listen very well to their teachers. They don't listen very well to their constituents. So that's one thing that I would make sure. I'm on that side, and I understand both as a parent and as, the educational aspect. If the school board doesn't listen to a teachers, they're gonna leave. They're gonna see other opportunities elsewhere. And I know Manassas Park is a very small district, and retaining quality teachers is difficult. But if there could be other things, we gotta get creative with the budget. But if there's other things that could be done in place to help support that, that might keep some teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which question I want to ask. But I appreciate your responses so far, Mr. Cummings. I'm going to go with the one that I've seen on social media more than anything, and that's the fighting that's occurred at our middle school and high school. And as a school board member, how would you address the issues of, it seems to be a uptick in physical violence and fighting in our schools? And so how would you handle that? What would be your thoughts on that issue?
I hope you can see my reaction, because I get it. I've stopped a couple of fights this year, so I understand being in the trenches as well as what it looks to and be with the reputation of Manassas Park. Those definitely hurt the reputation of our district. Stopping things is not the easiest. It truly takes a team, and and it's not just a team of like, oh, there's a couple of teachers that always know what's going on. Are the administrators clued into what's going on? Is law enforcement for those SROs, are they clued in what's going on? Do they know something that's going on in the community that might spill over into the schools? Because that happens a lot. I've seen that in my in various placements. As community members, if we hear something that our kids are talking about, do parents know exactly who to email? And is that person going to be responsive? Because once a fight started, it is what it is. It's going to go on social media. The key is to be able to avoid it. And those prevention, to actively prevent, will help keep a lot of those from happening. I can't stop them all, okay? But we can probably prevent a lot of them from happening.
Thanks.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending
your
battle.
eyes.
Emotions, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You wrote in one of your responses that Manassas Park has very little CTE. What programs would you like to see added?
All right, so some of the programs that I would love to see added are hands-on programs where students can get out into the community and do something. We've got some large construction companies in this area, very large. Could we get and develop a program alongside with some of those companies to be able to be hired as soon as they graduate high school? That is an end goal that I really do have. I see some of the other counties. All right, so I'm a little bit privileged on the information because I'm in CTE for the county that surrounds us. And that is a big push as well. Why can't Manassas Park get into that? What's that cost us? Nothing. What's that do? Builds relationships and builds positive reputation. It also gets students a job that's a living wage and a real work experience, and to develop a work ethic that will stay with them for the long term. That's I love CTE because they're going to be able to do stuff. They're going to be able to learn to use their hands. They're going to fix machines, and what's that going to do? Translate to fixing their own vehicles, which is going to save them money. We all know, right? It's a skill set that is invaluable. Does that answer? I'm trying to be short because I know you guys have a large agenda, but I hope you can understand my passion with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. If there were differences of opinion, differences of strongly held opinion within the members of the school board, or if there was a difference of opinion between the board and the administration, how would you iron that out? How would you work with that?
Differences of opinion happen quite often. I guess it comes down to one of the answers earlier, and the question we asked earlier: can you listen? Can you separate fact and opinion, and be able to act upon the facts and put away or just swallow the opinion to be able to move something forward? It's not easy. Being a mediator, there might be times where it might be two, and you're that vote. Can you do the mediation? Can you explain where you're thinking, what the ideas are? Are you able to basically come to a conclusion that is logical, financially stable, and more importantly, also able to be implemented? Does that answer? I hope that does.
Thank you.
Because cool heads must prevail.
We currently don't have a PTO. What are your ideas to have, to create it again, to bring it up to the school system again? I know we don't have it because of the whole COVID situation in 2020, and so now that we're back in full, how would you bring it back again? How would you help parents create the organization again?
That's a great question. This is something that could also be supported with booster organizations, especially at the high school level, that go down to the middle school and elementary and such. Those getting parents involved. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Being in multiple musical organizations, without our parents, we would not fly. Like parents drive it all. Getting them involved is what allows for success. So getting those parents in, I'm just throwing it out here, just throwing some ideas. Would it be prudent to involve some of the booster organizations and kind of also maybe ask for one volunteer to help begin to set the PTOs back up? Maybe it would be appointed as a single year position, and trying to get someone else to kind of fill in a position, but also be able to train and have the expertise. Because booster organizations and PTO have so many similarities. Their missions are so in line with each other. Although they're supporting maybe an individual here and there, the goal is the students. And whether it's raising the money for something here or here or here, it's the same consistency. So the expertise could be applied, maybe from one booster organization here, can bring them together, one person from each to start to form the PTO and start to train other people in. That's what's got to happen. You've got to train people and get them interested. Friends of friends, they see this person's doing this. Friends of friends, they talk. Get them to get involved. I would ask our parents to also, those who are active, to help recruit. Their kids are friends with other parents, their kids' friends. There's active availability right there, at least to get the word out. Who knows? We might get a couple of really good candidates. If it weren't for an email, I wouldn't be here. So, I mean, it's a matter of also getting social media out. There's always a good way to frame things and a positive way to frame it, and again, it also comes down to doing the parent-teacher nights. Would that booster organization be able to, quote unquote, provide that free pizza to encourage people to come here? See, I hope you guys can kind of see how I'm trying to intertwine everything, because it really is all intertwined. It's, even though they're supporting one thing, it's all intertwined because it's for the students.
Thank you.
That's a good
My question is, sometimes the economy falls flat and the state has budget reductions or the city has reductions.
Yeah.
If you had to come up with scenarios of reduction, what would you identify to reduce?
That's a good question. Quite honestly, we have to look at what the budget is. Where's their excess? And that comes down to line items. That's a tough question because it's never easy to reduce a budget, even household, your own personal budget. And that would be a conversation that would be very difficult. And I don't know that I can identify one thing specifically, because when I looked at our budget, it didn't include tons of line items and was super specific. It was very largely general that I pulled off of our website and board docs. So that would be a big conversation that would have to have, and compromise is going to have to happen. But let's be real, it's likely to happen. On the other side, are there federal grants that are going to become available from the DOE? Could we apply for some of those grants to help fill in some of that budgetary gap? That's a great question. Could we reach out to businesses for, let's say we need some CTE equipment just because that's my thing, and to form a partnership, and then one thing, they help us here, we help them here. Could that be an answer? That's to be discussed. But it's not an easy answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question for you, how would you describe the role of a member of the school board?
Being able to be professional in the community, and also an active role model. Yeah, I mean, that, when I say in the community, I'm not talking about just in person, because there's gonna be times, and I have seen being out with my friends, bless you. My buddy's father is a school board member for his area. I've been with him even after graduating college, and I've seen parents come up to him in Walmart and ask him questions. That's a real situation that is likely to happen. Our city's not very large in terms of square mileage. So let's be real. It's going to happen. It might be even at Sheets. I look at it, and it's got to be professional online as well. You need to be professional and also have the expectation, and that, as you asked earlier, that firewall to be able to say, I'm not going to necessarily remember your question. Can you send me, here's a business card, can you send me an email at this here and make sure that you highlighted, we met here, and then so that way it can jog my memory at best. And then that way, like you said, being active in the community, you're not putting off a person, right? But you're also trying to maintain that confidentiality that must be handled and maintained. But you're also opening that another line of communication. I mean, they might not be happy to be handed a business card and said here, but on the other side, if I'm at Walmart or at Signal Hill Park, I'm there with my family. So, and that's my focus at that time. But I definitely want to hear what has to be said. And I want to be able to acknowledge what the issue is. And having that in writing and be able to set up that definition would definitely assist in that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll move into your 3 minutes closing remark, and again, Mr. Nguyen will be the timekeeper.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for the opportunity to come in front and that I can present myself as a candidate for Manassas Park City School Board. I hope that my experiences from so many different areas will help our students here. I'm as invested as many of you are. You mentioned many of you have children in our schools, and as do I. What do I want to see? I want to see their long-term success. What do I also want to see? Any other students that we serve's long-term success. Inspiring students is not easy. State scores, you can see that in my responses, the questions you asked me. One of the hardest things to do is to inspire a kid to take a state test. Who wants to do that, honestly? Right? Many of us only take state tests for degrees because we have to in order to get into our jobs. That test doesn't always mean that they don't have the aptitude and abilities to be successful. So my job, what could be my job as a school board member, is to facilitate abilities and avenues for success for students that are outside of their traditional brick and mortar schools. I'm a huge fan of CTE, and that's one of the biggest things that puts kids in a positive light. I have seen some of my, I want to call them all-star students, really. I had them as wild sixth graders and as eighth graders and going into high school. They want those hands-on activities. They want to be able to use those tools in a professional, semi-professional setting. And that's because of the abilities that I've been able to provide. What I really want to see is all students, especially in the area that I live in, be able to provide some of that as well. I know we're not going to hit every student, but we're sure going to try. We're going to put our best effort out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There will be a public hearing on May 16th. If you have supporters who would like to come and speak on your behalf, they are more than welcome to do that. Or if they don't want to come in person, they can send emails to Ms. Lena Connor. The vote will occur on June 6th, and again, we thank you so very much for your willingness to serve on the school board.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay with us for the rest of the evening, but we realize you probably have something you have to do. Okay. Thanks again. Okay. Next, we will move into public comment time. Is anyone signed up to make public comment? Okay. Is there a member of the governing body who would like to make public comment?
I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Community Maintenance Working Group, which is myself, Councilmember Amaya, Lori Meem, and Maria, who we can never pronounce her name. Shivik. I'd like to thank everybody that came out last Saturday for the first spring cleanup, including Councilmember Moore. We had around close to 20 people show up, including many of the young men and women from the Scouts. And we filled out a back of a pickup truck full of trash.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yes.
Yeah.
wow.
And that's not hitting all the streets.
No, those are three streets.
Yeah. So more to come. So thank you to everybody that came out.
Yeah, that's great. And I also want to mention that Community Day on the Plaza this past Saturday was a huge success. There were about 40 service providers there to provide information for the public. There were seminars in the library on the various aspects of home buying. There was entertainment, there was a food truck, and the event was very well attended. So thank you to staff and everyone who worked on this to make it a success. Special thanks to our housing program coordinator, Ms. Yvette Monty, who was the driving force behind the event. So thank you. Anyone else would like to make public comment? Okay, be that. Okay, moving on to, let's move into the budget session. So, okay.
Yeah, let me see what's on the agenda here, but we're starting off with a Q&A, so each department can just come up.
I'm sorry,
And-
can you say that again?
I said we're starting with a Q&A, so each department can just come up as you call them along the agenda.
Okay.
And then if you have any questions for them, you can hopefully answer that, and then we'll get into presentations
Okay.
right after HR. We'll go into the first presentation, Community Services.
Okay, so we have our treasurer first, followed by our registrar, and then our commissioner of revenue.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Hit me with your best one.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
What impacts will your office see with the increase of housing in Manassas Park?
You're gonna have more tax bills. more
Can you
water
speak
bills.
into your microphone, please? Thank you.
I think you have to press it.
Thank you.
You're gonna have more tax bills, more water bills. I mean, it's going to impact us.
So the workload, clearly the
So-
workload will increase, and so will the expenses to handle all of the
Handle
the actual production of the bills and the
Production of the
collection.
billing, mailing it out. everything. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The only question I have, is the comp board increasing the minimum starting salary on the FTEs on what you get from the state comp board?
I don't think we've heard anything. I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
How are you feeling staff-wise with the upcoming transfer of the software?
I think we haven't heard anything enough to
To know?
know yet.
Okay.
Great.
Questions? No? Go ahead.
I guess, question, have you seen more residents using the online platform to pay their water bills? Or do we have the same crowd coming in every time? And what do you think about the efficiencies? I mean, is it something that we need to transition harder to, or to alleviate burden on your staff? I mean,
To be honest, in our community, you're going to have more walk-ins
yeah,
and more mail than you are online. And the new system we went with for online,
yeah.
you can't pay by check. You can't do an ACH. So you had a lot of people do ACHs.
Yeah.
But I mean, the majority of our payments are checks and they're in the mail, or they're walk-in and it's cash.
Yeah, we're working with the vendor to get the ACH up and running.
Oh, so it's capable.
It's
It is, it's just, that's the next
my
step.
question, yeah. I think that's why my next question was, I think it's important to have that streamline the
Very
process.
important.
You know,
Very
checks don't get lost in the mail, you're not processing checks, and it's easier to do that. So, I mean, I would like, as he said, that capability to come up, and your department to take a look at how we can improve.
And I'm hoping we come up with the capability of, you can put in your credit card information and it just debits it every month.
Oh, auto pay, yep.
Because then you're going to have less shut-offs, which means relief for the water department. And, you set it in there and you don't have to worry about it.
Right. And have we, remind me, I don't know, city manager, or, do we have kiosks up there that people could pay remotely, or do they still have to go to the counter?
No, you have them,
Okay,
but again, here,
they want the check.
well, it's not even that. You have to put in an email address. A lot of our residents, they don't have an email address. And you use the kiosk, okay, if you came in right now and wanted a decal, and
Yeah.
you chose to use the kiosk, it doesn't hit my system until tomorrow. So I couldn't hand you a decal right away.
I see,
So that's a struggle in itself right there.
yeah.
Can the system interface multiple times a day, Laszlo? Or is it just, does it settle at night?
It settles at night.
Yeah, right now it settles at night,
You can't
correct.
do it multiple times a day?
Again, we're gonna have to figure that out once we get a new ERP to see what can be enhanced.
And just in closing, I mean, so, as the department head, what do you think is a way that you can, I guess, transition to that? I mean, or if you think that's a good plan or not, to have more online presence?
I think we do need to.
Yeah.
Now, my personal opinion, a lot of residents have said, the kiosk is upstairs and we're sitting right there. Why are you going to a kiosk when you have a cashier sitting right there?
Or maybe move it downstairs, I guess.
Yes. Because you could use it on weekends. If you're
Okay.
going to the library and there's a kiosk there, you could do it right there. Where upstairs is locked on weekends.
Yeah.
You can't use the kiosk.
Right.
And that might reduce the number of checks and such in the
Right,
overnight.
because, I bring my child to the, you bring your child to the library, oh, I'm here, I can pay my water
Bill,
bill.
yeah, exactly. Okay. That's it. Well, thank you for coming up.
You're welcome, thank you
Any
for your
other
support.
Questions?
you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Thank you. And registrar. Any questions for our registrar?
Of course I do.
Yes, ma'am.
So, good evening, Trish. How you doing?
Good.
So, quick question. Are we, the new system that we're getting, or the new machines are we getting, are they the same machines that our surrounding counties are using as well?
We are a step ahead. Am I pushing the right button? It says push.
I'm not sure. Is it green?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We're a little bit ahead of our other jurisdictions. Manassas City purchased their new scanners 2 years after we did before. So we've hit the 10-year mark. The great thing about the new scanners is they're high speed. So when we get into our cap and we're doing the processing for the presidentials and the larger elections, we'll be able to get the ballots scanned through a lot faster. Also, we're going to be able to do a lot of online reporting with getting the information for the precinct results a lot faster than we have been in the past. And it's already set for future changes in elections that we may see coming.
Okay,
See.
thank you.
This is probably a more legislative question. I know they talked about doing voting centers, and because we have the primary coming up and we have to open every precinct, and it's supposed to be considered a low turnout. Does the state pay 100% of that for all the primary?
You know, the only elections that are paid for are the presidential primaries in March. The General Assembly goes through and they decide how much is paid out, but we do get reimbursed for them only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Question? Comments or questions?
Just
Yes.
a quick question. Patricia, I know some cities and counties have elected to do voting on Sundays. Has the electoral board decided to vote here in Manassas Park on Sundays?
We've had one of the parties come talk to our board about doing this. Past records with the localities that are surrounding us have not had a adequate enough turnout to man it. We work a lot of 6 and 7 day weeks or days per week during the elections prepping. The only day we get off before the election in a 2-week period is that Sunday. So the fact that we're smaller and most of our people have voted by that point, the board did not feel that it was an adequate pressure to put on the staff.
Okay.
So they decided not to do it. We've seen a lot of the other localities who are going backward with it, not offering it all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? No. Question? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our Commissioner of Revenue.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Aye.
Have some questions, make them easy.
Could you speak directly into the, more directly? Oh, it was on?
I'm just short, maybe that's it.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you know approximately how much difference in businesses we've had from last year to this year? Like ballpark-wise percentage, is it like an increase of 5, decrease of 5%?
I'm sorry, did you say businesses? We had quite a big decrease. There are some increases, but a lot of our older, bigger businesses have left, and I try to send you all an email when I know about that.
Yeah, we've seen those, yeah, thank you.
Just a question in the community. Has any of the businesses surveyed and said they would like a flat B poll? Have you heard anything in the community? Because I know some other localities will do a flat B poll. And I know we do it by,
The only thing I've heard is people not wanting to pay their B poll tax.
okay.
People saying we're being chased out of some areas, so they didn't want to get a license, even though they're there running their business for now, but
Perfect, thank you.
Question? Comments or, yes?
Kind of to piggyback on that, are you getting a lot of compliance or do you see some slipping through
there's some slipping through,
still?
still trying to recover from COVID.
Gotcha.
Okay. Comments? I was very sad to see my favorite dry cleaning establishment going out of business in the Andrew Drive Plaza. Yeah. Yeah, that's too bad.
The Brenner's
sorry?
Automotive that went out of business had been here they were here when I got here 31 years ago. So
Okay. Thank you.
hard to see the ones that really comply with everything and you don't have any trouble out of them. It's
Yeah.
hard to see those go.
Yeah, I'll bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Finance Department.
And this will include also the assessors, so Darius is also here. If you guys have anything for him.
Hello,
Hello,
Madam
Pam.
Mayor
How are you?
and council members. Has been a while, but I'm
Yes,
here.
yes. Questions or comments?
Just really quick,
Yes.
this is more for the assessor. Many, many moons ago, the assessors went around and basically did a true-up, because I remember this because they're knocking on the front door and want to go to our back door to see the neighbors. Is there any plans for that in the coming year or next fiscal year or two?
I mean, as far as just people coming around to just kind of see all the properties?
Yeah, just, so I remember them just
update.
double checking to make sure that, I remember knocking on the door, wanting to go in the backyard, so they could see, make sure that someone, I'm assuming, because I didn't follow them, to make sure that someone didn't add on an addition without doing the necessary paperwork, so that they could adequately and correctly assess people.
Yeah, that's something we want to do. I've seen in some places where they've kind of started doing that kind of like virtual inspections, so we may utilize that. That might be a more efficient way to kind of get through, see most of the properties in the area. Since we just got a two-man office.
Yeah.
But that's something we are looking to do, make sure our kind of records are up to date.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
The only question I have is are any of your positions partially funded through the state comp board?
None of my positions.
I mean, the assessor is.
No.
I'm sorry, Pon, did you say none of your positions?
If they're in the commercial revenue, then yeah, but they don't count
They
it.
still redirect that funding.
But we don't even get, for our commercial revenue, what do we get? There'll be like one FTE if we're lucky from the state?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
really low. It's something like 22,000.
Yeah, so,
They base the salary on, and then they pay 50% of that.
Okay, thank you.
yes. So we don't really get support from the state when it comes to the constitutional officers. Recently, for the registrar, they've kind of stepped up their game a little bit and have been providing more support. But for some reason, for the treasurer and the commissioner, we're just not getting help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Could you please repeat what you said, Pon?
All of our positions in finance are funded by the city funds, not from
Entirely.
the state.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions? Good. Councilmember Javed, do you have a,
I think I'm good.
no? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next we have HR. Okay, comments or questions for HR?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Any comments or questions?
No.
No? No? Apparently, we have done.
Okay, well, that was easy. Great, thank you. Thank you for having me this evening.
Well,
Oh,
thank you.
actually, I got one, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
got
have
one.
one? Yes, go
I
ahead.
would, I don't remember seeing this in the budget or not. Did we include another FTE for your department?
Currently, for FY24, we have two budgeted positions,
Right.
HR, and then a payroll specialist. So
Specialist, that's what
it
it
is
was,
just
the
two
specialist.
full-time.
Yeah, but that's actually, so it's slightly down from last year. So last year it was budgeted 2.33.
Right.
We had a position that was split between community services, HR, and finance, kind of divided by 3. Didn't work out, and so we're now using the admin team, the part-time admin team, to also help out HR. But
Okay.
while it was budgeted for 2 people the last few years, we've only had a team of 1. We
That's what I'm
haven't been
saying,
able
your
to fill it.
department is like a team of one.
Yeah, but we finally did fill the position here over the last couple months, and it's working out great, so
Okay,
cross our fingers that it works.
Okay.
Yeah, our payroll specialist started in March,
Yeah.
and she's doing really well, so
Oh, good.
knock on wood, she sticks around. She's doing really great.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving into the presentations.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. I'll be briefing this slide deck this year. Not going over the whole deck, but just the summary here. You can see for the Community Services Department, this is a department that's largely funded by ARPA. You can see the new org chart. When we started, we had a mental health coordinator as well. That was abolished. We had the .33 FTE. That was abolished. And then the Economic Development Coordinator was replaced with this Business Tourism and Events Coordinator, who just started a couple weeks ago and helped out last Saturday, and that's to replace. So that was the former Economic Development Coordinator and also replacing the future proposed Downtown Events Coordinator as well, just to get some savings. So you can see the budget went down slightly. I think some of this will change at the mid-year budget. So this year we got a lot more of the opioid settlement funds, and this Tuesday you'll get a briefing from the health director or health coordinator about those funds and what their eligible uses are and what some recommendations are for how we utilize that money. But we got a lot in FY23. It's projected to be down in 24, but that's just because of what we know right now. There's still some pending additional funds that will likely come to us next year, so expect this number to go up in the FY24 budget amendment. We just don't know how much more we'll get in those, but we'll break down the long-term, what we know right now, funding we're getting from the opioid relief funds. It's like a 10-year funding stream. And then what we can do with that. And then, as a reminder, in 23, that was the end of the voucher program, the Shop at the Park program, which is very successful. So we spent about $138,000 in 23. That doesn't exist in 24, so that's part of the reason why the budget's going down. And then just some decrease in office supplies. Everyone had, across the budget, just larger office supplies last year to support the move to the new City Hall. So everyone's office supplies are largely going down. Then increases include not ARPA funded, but just the .0.5 FTE addition for this position. Right now it's a part-time position. We'd like to make it a full-time position so that 1 FTE replaces 1.5 FTEs in the budget. But that will be a cost in 24 of $24,000, which is a lot less than what the downtown events coordinator was going to cost. And then we're still looking to close a deal with Fairfax County for their mental health services program. They provide mental health services for their employees, and they've been looking to branch out. They already have some other jurisdictions that they're servicing, but they're currently in a transition to a new building near the Fair Oaks Mall, and they just didn't want to bring on any additional clients until they finalize that move. I think they're wrapping up that move, so we're going to re-engage to try to get that contract up and running for our employees. And then other changes that you'll see in the line item budget, you'll see that there's $0 for internet access support, but really we just moved those funds for rent, mortgage, and utilities. We never really had any takers for the internet access, so we're just kind of putting it in the framework of utilities and going forward with that. So we've had multiple applications for this, and then a couple payouts for those as well. Mainly, we had a lot more for water and sewer. That's where we had a lot more investment for residents to support them for water and sewer, and we got some of that state funding as well. So that's something else we can consider as we kind of keep moving forward here. If we want to do another round in the future, if we don't end up spending a lot of this money next year, if we still have a lot kind of left over, we may want to do another round of water and sewer support as well. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Okay. Questions? Yes.
With COVID now being declared, we're no longer in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And I know that was one of the main priorities of the public health coordinator. What will be the main priority now of the public health coordinator position?
Yeah, so structurally, that position, the reason why it existed was to liaison with the health department on our behalf. The priority of the health department over the last 2 years was similar to our priority as a city, which was COVID-19 response. Now it's just the general services of whatever the health department is doing in the region, making sure that our residents are getting access for that, supporting the MAP clinic in their operations from a public health standpoint, but also mental health. We eliminated that position, and we put that responsibility for this person. They're serving on the CSB, and then also our liaison for all the CSB services for our residents as well, and then also the emergency management coordinator as well. So they're involved in those functions. So we have kind of 2.5 positions rolled up into one to support us for ongoing support. Similar to the housing coordinator is a liaison with the county health department and the state health entity, which really kind of operate independently, but both of which provide services to our residents, so helping our residents navigate those two programs.
Okay, thank you.
Along with other duties as assigned, like supporting your committee.
We're the easiest of our duties.
Question?
No, thank you for that.
Any other comments? No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Parks and Rec that's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. Is this good or am I loud enough?
You good?
Okay.
You want to pull it up to your mouth, that way it's
Always afraid we'll throw this across the room. I talk with my hands so much.
You have a soft voice, that's why.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So I'll be presenting tonight for the Department of Parks and Recreation, FY24 operating budget summary. I'll try to keep that close to a summary and not get too verbose. But essentially, I'll start from the left-hand side and work my way across to the right. So right now, our department is comprised of 18 full-time staff, 75 part-time, and 90 seasonal staff members. The 90 seasonal members, we were at the height in the summer of '22, July, August, so that number has dropped way off, obviously. But we'll start to pick that up again as well once we move into the spring and summer season now and start bringing on our summer staffing levels. Our full-time staff members, we're averaging 11 years of service, with our longest tenured employee having 23 years of service with the city. 72% of our staff have 10-plus years of service with the city, and 83% have been working for the city for at least 7 years. After evaluating a full fiscal year's worth of data, we saw some a pretty strong bounce back in FY22 when looking at our traditional performance metrics. Across the board, we saw increases in all categories with the exception of one. That was a push, so we fortunately didn't go down there. But again, significant increases were prevalent in most categories. Facebook engagement was over 50%, special events and library visits both over 70%. Library visits and rentals sold both over 70%, revenue over 100%. And then our swim lessons and facility tours came in at 462 and 883% respectively. So a very strong year in terms of our traditional metrics. It's been an exciting year in '23 in the parks. We've had several large projects come through. The Signal Hill Playground upgrade took place in November of '22. That essentially just was a replacement of all the previous equipment with all new equipment, safety surfacing, and borders. And then the following month, we're able to do the Polk Park basketball court upgrade. That's predominantly complete. However, we do have some final touches that we have to iron out there. We just need Mother Nature to cooperate with the weather so we can get some warm weather, and we'll get the surface taken care of. But the good thing is the court has been accessible to residents during this time, so they've been able to still play on the court. But it'll be finalized here in the next few weeks. On February 28th, I know most, if not all of you, were here for a special event. The city held a special meeting to honor the Naylor family and officially convey the Naylor Cemetery parcel to the Naylor Family Historical Society. It was a tremendous event. I know all involved, was certainly, it was very impactful and walked away taking a lot from that. So we were in Parks and Rec happy to be a part of it and participate in that. Kind of pivoting a little bit and going to some notable changes to our FY24 operating lines. There are some changes here, a mixture of increases and decreases. Most notably, $96,000 increase in the part-time salary and wages line. That does align with last year's analysis that we did in all of our divisions within the Parks and Rec department, and also coincides with the state's minimum wage schedule over the next couple of years, which tops out in FY26 as of now at $15 an hour. We did take into effect some market adjustments that are kind of basically an impact or impacted by the current employee shortage that the country's facing. We saw increases in contract services, repairs and maintenance, and signal bay pull ops of $15,000, $24,000, and $12,000 respectively. and decreases in library services and water sewer. The water sewer decrease is basically related to a discrepancy in the tangible size of the meters at at the community center, and then what the size was listed in the water billing software. So once we got that synced up and rectified, there's a big cost savings there moving forward, which comes in handy because our hope is to repurpose those monies to address some serious needs in those other three lines I just mentioned that are essentially we'll be facing due to the cost of goods and services, based on the inflationary impacts that we're seeing right now in the economy. In terms of the $17,000 decrease in library services, that's strictly the monies that come from the state. And the Library of Virginia submits that to the city each year. That changes year to year. A number of factors are in play there based on things such as how many new libraries may come online in the state, how much money the state has to allocate to all localities, even down to are there significant changes to existing localities in terms of size and scope of the services that they offer. But again, that changes every year, and we generally find out in October of the year. The last two are an $8,000 increase in seasonal events and a $2,000 increase in July 4th contracts. The seasonal events line is directly related to having a more robust event presence on the in the plaza, and this is associated with the cost that will enable us to facilitate that. And then the $2,000 increase in July 4th contracts is a recommendation from the vendor who has indicated to expect a minimum of 3 to 4% each year moving forward, just again due to the cost of doing business. So I wanted to just kind of jump to some highlights from FY23. The first two items, the Glow in the Park After Dark and the Breakfast with Santa events, those are the most, those were, I wanted to note because of they broke attendance records for those two particular events. The Glow in the Park is a fairly new event. It's been around a couple years, but the Breakfast with Santa has been in place for a long time, and we saw really great totals and interest in both of those events in August and December. As you all know, we had the Park Central ribbon cutting here on July 16th, which is a very special day for the city. Also, the grand opening in the new downtown for the library on September 11th. And I wanted to mention too our Manassas Park Youth Travel Basketball League. We had 2 Coach of the Year honors this year, 1 Player of the Year, and 9 All-League players. So it was definitely a great turnout for our travel league, not only players but also coaches. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of show here, I believe these numbers were applicable as of the middle of last week's when Holly sent them over to me. So our library patronage card holders, as you can see here, the majority, as we all would assume, is Manassas Park residents, but there's a really strong presence coming from City of Manassas and then the rest of the state of Virginia. The library continues to thrive and do well and proves to be a very attractive asset to the community, and is being utilized not only by Manassas Park residents but those in the region as well. So that's all I have, and I'm hoping my questions are similar to Mr. Pelko's, the number of which that I received.
Comments or questions?
I do. So many, many moons ago, I know that there was a plan or a goal to have 1,000 events in a year, and I don't remember when this was. This was a while back. So that I was thinking about this the other day, which got me thinking, how many events are we planning for fiscal '24, and do we already have a schedule for those events?
Yes, so I think the 1,000 number you may be referencing, we had offered 1,000 plus programs annually when we first unveiled our All Access Passport membership, which at the time all of those were free. Yeah. So it was kind of a way to try to build more capacity in the facility and get more, basically programming, fill out those programming slots. We've since cut, kind of pulled away from that just because of the cost that was incurred was just too much to maintain. We still do offer a number of complimentary, what I would call it, programs that go along with that membership, but it's nowhere near the 1,000 annually that it used to be. In terms of events,
I'm thinking everything, events, offerings, like the whole menu.
Sure.
That Parks and Rec will provide in fiscal '24, because that'll help me make the connection
Sure.
between the request for 183 people, and CFTEs, because that's a mixture of FTEs and, 0.5 FTEs, but 183 bodies.
Gotcha. In terms of events, our goal was between 25 and 30 events for FY24. In terms of programming, we're trying to build that back up. That has been one of our biggest challenges coming out of the pandemic, is to kind of resurrect that programming, the interest from the community, but also attracting, consistent, qualified individuals to come in and work and teach, especially instructors. So our adult programming has been a challenge to continue to kind of like resurrect that. And then also our school age programming's been difficult as well. We just don't have as much interest. I think a lot of that is maybe linked to the change in just the work dynamic, where more parents are home now, with telework options and remote work options. And so we're kind of trying to tackle that, find strategies to figure out ways to increase interest, build that capacity back up. But as of now, I don't think 1,000 is a realistic number for us, going into FY24.
So we're thinking maybe between, you said 20 to 30 events, and then maybe that much in offerings, maybe?
Well, as far as like programs, our goal is to be up around 700 to 800 programs.
Okay.
Yeah. But we would consider a program, say, like a karate class.
Right.
That would be like an example of a
Or
program.
we're looking around, shy of 1,000.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
Sure.
The only comment I have is your team does a great job, your staff does, and don't worry about the childcare stuff, because that's going across everywhere, I think, because even the school systems are down. I know where I work at prior, I know they're down as well, just in programming for like even preschool, but, thank you for everything your staff does.
Thank you.
Do we have a date for the Christmas light parade yet?
The Christmas light
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know we were still talking about the calendar for 24, but I don't know if we settled on something.
We are. I think
Yeah.
I think we had kind of tentatively looked at the first Friday of the month.
Yeah, we're going to do a presentation about kind of upcoming events.
First Saturday, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
first Saturday of the month.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Yes.
How is hiring going for the water park?
I think it's going well. Yeah, I mean, there's, the last 2 years, it's been very strong. There's, staff's done a great job of like repeat, being able to maintain, staff members from previous years, and return staff. But yeah, it's definitely like it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's just, building up that capacity. There's been a lot of recruitment events that they've been attending and, getting the word out. I know I signed 2 more new hire packets yesterday, for staff members, aquatic staff members. So it's a gradual kind of deliberate process, but so far so good.
Good. And then I have a question for Holly. Sorry. I just wanted to know, I know you've done a lot of really unique programs at the library this past year that were very successful. What do you have planned for this upcoming year?
Well, the biggest one that we're currently planning is our summer reading program. We do it every year, of course, and so the theme this year is all together now. So we're going to have reptiles. We're going to do a kickoff on the plaza, and then we're going to have a performer come in at the end of the year for called Groovy Nate. Those are just the big ones, and that's not counting all of our smaller programs that we're doing throughout. We are reaching out to a variety of local authors as well to try to come in and speak about their books. We have a couple on the agenda already as well there. We're planned through about August, mid-August for the summer reading, but we haven't planned anything past that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Comments or questions?
Just, comment. Was at the Polk Park on Saturday and was very impressed with the upgrade to the basketball court there. It just looks phenomenal and really looks great.
Awesome.
So thank you for all the work on that, Jim.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Hey, well, let me start off with the increase in the day passes. Have you heard any feedback on that or pushback or?
Not really. I think there was
Smooth transition.
one email that was moderately concerned. I wouldn't even say they were strongly concerned. And I was very pleased with the response rate. That we just really didn't have a lot of negative pushback. So it's been great so far.
I know drop-offs, same crowd still coming in, you think, or?
For our daily drop-ins, actually, the week or bi-weekly meeting we have with Mr. Palco tomorrow, I know my slide that I created for that, we did have like a little bit of a drop-off from the week prior. The first week included the old rates, and then the following week, the most recent week, included the new rates. Okay. There was a drop-off. I think it's probably a little premature at this point to determine if that's relevant or like related, or it could just be an outlier, an anomaly. I'll get a better sense of that in some of the upcoming meetings when I kind of can see if there's a trend there. Sure. Again, nothing super alarming in terms of the number, but there was more of a difference than there traditionally has been.
It's too early. I mean, the 6-month mark, maybe you can reassess then or a year after, but I just want to make sure that, it's not
and again, that was just going for our daily drop-ins at the community center.
Okay.
Yeah, that didn't affect the other rate changes.
The other question is, I know we do the dumpster service, that we have the cardboard dumpster right now, or the glass, is it glass or cardboard? What is that?
Yeah, that's, so the glass is still under order, so that was approved in the prior budget, and this is for the next speaker for Calvin. The cardboard boxes are part of, or dumpster is part of the proposal for this budget, where that was kind of one of the decision points we wanted from you all. Do you want one? Do you want two?
Well,
do you
that's
want
what
to
I
buy
was-
it? Do you
yeah.
want to rent it? Those are kind of the options. So if we want two, we'd have to find somewhere on the west side. Right now, we have one planned in Signal Hill Park, and then we'd have to find another location on the west side if you wanted one over there. Right now, we just, in the budget, just have one, and then the other alternative was just pay for everyone's larger individual receptacle, or just have residents pay for it, because Patriot would offer that to them, but they'd have to pay for it.
Right, that was my next question, because right now we have one in the budget. I think we need to have two, one on each end of the city. Well, I guess something for the governing body to decide on that, but I think it just making a trip 15 minutes down to the park from that end is a long trip for somebody. I don't want to discourage, but I think we should consider, I think it's 3,000 for a dumpster service, something like that. 3,000.
Yeah, just under 3,000, I think, for year one.
To get one more.
That's not much.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do one more. There was another question here.
Do you have another question, follow-up?
Yeah. I lost my train of thought, sorry. I could email a question later.
Okay,
if it
sure.
comes up.
No problem.
Any other comments or questions down here?
Just one really quick
Yes, ma'am.
one. When we were at Polk, the playground equipment, it's like a lot of our equipment, it's served us well. When does that go into rotation to be replaced? Do you recall?
Yes, so actually, I was waiting to see if I had some remaining funds left over after the Polk Park basketball court upgrade project to try to address that, and it's looking like I definitely will. So the wheels are in motion on that. As far as replacement for that equipment, it'll be pretty similar in terms of like-for-like replacement. We'll also get new borders and new surfacing as well. Unfortunately, the supply chains are still pretty slow in that industry or delayed. But my hope is late May, early June, we should be able to have that replaced.
Okay, that's actually a lot sooner than.
Than we thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hope, crossing my fingers.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions?
I did remember
Yes,
one of
go
them.
ahead.
The July 4th event, does the city pay for those food trucks, or are they paying the city to be a vendor? Is that
Yeah, they pay the city. There's a fee for the day that the vendor pays the city. So we take in, it's not a huge amount of money, but the city does take in some revenue as a result of those trucks being there.
And that's the only revenue we take from that event, is the, I guess,
Parking.
so, okay, that's parking people.
Yeah, the parking actually ends up being quite a bit more than the food trucks.
Do we get food tax?
Yeah, we do. I mean, if they generated enough, but yeah, they're supposed to be reporting their meals taxes and paying that to Debbie.
Are they reporting it? I mean, are we getting it?
I
Did we get
can't
it?
confirm what, again, I don't track meals taxes in terms of what we actually get by business. That's not a function of the city.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So-
a question for the Commissioner of Revenue.
So we might not know if they paid it.
Again, I don't collect meals
Okay.
taxes.
Question for the Commissioner of
Yes.
Revenue. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up with that would be is that compared to last year, that line item expenditure increased for the event. So I was wondering, I mean, it says like porta potties and stuff like that. Are we ordering more, or I'm trying to see how we could.
Are you referencing the July 4th line or the
July 4th
seasonal
line,
events?
Yeah, the July 4th.
So the
specifically.
July 4th line solely addresses the contract. There's no additional expenditure linked to that, but the July 4th contract with the vendor.
Okay.
We
No,
use,
for the whole event, I'm saying, like what you're spending, not just on the fireworks. I guess there's the porta potty renter contracts.
yeah, we use our seasonal events line to address some of those costs. So like the porta potties, the light towers, water, flashlights, staff items, things like that will come out of that seasonal events line.
Okay, out of the seasonal event. Okay.
And that was the one that went up at 8,000.
And Hasib, if you wanted to get a true cost of the 4th of July,
Yeah.
we'd have to tap into all the different departments that supported that day. Police department, fire department, public works.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just specifically talking about their line item, yeah.
Yeah, but if we
Yeah, no, I
wanted to get a
understand,
true
yeah.
cost, that's what we'd have to do.
Seasonal. So that was under the seasonal line item. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Sounds good, sure.
Is that it?
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, moving on to community development.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, welcome, Calvin.
Wait 1 second, Calvin. Let me get your slide up. Yeah. Okay, Calvin, your slide is up.
All right. Well, I wanted to take an opportunity to sort of use some highlights and, summary comments from 23 to talk about the 24 budget. First, we'll start with some personnel updates. We had a highly successful transition to the new Public Works Superintendent and Stormwater Crew Leader. I had the utmost confidence in those individuals going into this transition, but we put them in a mirroring situation a year ahead of the anticipated retirement date of some of our long-tenured crew and our former superintendent. And it has gone swimmingly for both me as a director, for the staff underneath the superintendent, for the division crew leaders, and I think for management as well. And because of that success, the way that the superintendent handles himself and is able to coordinate with other departments, coordinate with the various managers within the community development department, certainly lends some confidence in that individual, and moving him up in the org chart to the manager tier so that there's no longer a manager between him and the the director, and that he is free to, prioritize and coordinate requests from fellow managers and from management and other departments. It's a big compliment to him, but it's also sort of an efficiency to the department in and of itself. So that if you notice, the first series of slides in the budget and the operating budget presentation was really focused on a organizational structure change, and that was one of the major drivers, was the actual success of this transition to a new superintendent. We also were able to fill all of the available Public Works crewman positions, except for a vacancy that just came up with a February retirement. We're still actively searching for that position. But, in filling all those positions, I had my expectations. And one of the things that was I was quick to harp on was, so when do we start replacing those valves in Bloom's Crossing? We've got Bloom's Crossing sort of about a 50-50 mix of valves that are still in really good shape, and then water valves that we're kind of afraid to touch because they don't behave well when we go cranking on them. And the answer was, we have filled the crewman positions in water and sewer, but a couple of those crewmen are completely dedicated to other things, that they're not really at the behest of the crew leader. They're always doing water sampling. They're always doing work for water billing. They're always doing work for Miss Utility. I think a lot of people forget that we have our own 2 utilities in this city that we have to mark for Miss Utility. So anytime anyone's doing work, we're doing those tickets to go out and mark the water and sewer. And so we lose 2 crewmen in water and sewer to those types of duties every single day. They're not really available for the crew leader to utilize. And that was why in the org chart, you notice that we are recommending a water operator position and a utility location specialist, a leak detection specialist, because that is really what 2 of those positions are doing full-time anyways. But that would allow the water and sewer crew to actually focus on water and sewer duties with the same success that we had with the streets crew this year. We also welcomed aboard a deputy facilities manager. I think if you read through the operating budget presentation, you'll notice that there was a lot of reduced budget line items in facilities, budget line items that reduced by 15% or more. That's partly because we now have 2 very experienced HVAC technicians on staff. We now have a tenured porter who's very familiar with her duties, and we also have a cleaning contract with a new company for City Hall. We feel very confident going into this year that there will be savings on the facility side because we have those 3 full-time positions. We have a part-time position, and we think that we're going to incur some savings in FY24. We were not able to have any luck in the part-time crewman recruitment for the year-round positions. Remember, there was year-round part-time crewman positions, and then there were seasonal part-time crewman positions. We've advertised those year-round positions. We have not had any luck. So now we're really focused on trying to focus on summer employment, and we're attending all the city events, and we're getting the word out there, trying to capture college kids' parents, maybe some graduating high school seniors. You want to come on board and work for the summer for Public Works, we'd love to have you. We are still searching for that backflow prevention specialist and the building official. These are 2 very specialty positions. We right now are facing continued zoning applications, continued pursuit of future development permits, and we have not seen a real slowdown in the smaller residential permits and even the smaller commercial permits. Permit activity has stayed high, and we really need to get a building official on board. And that backflow prevention specialist is that 3rd specialist position in the new organizational chart underneath, in that water division. The capital project highlights, this was a real driver behind a lot of the thinking with the organizational restructuring. I'd like to start with the culverts. We know how important these culvert reconditioning projects were. We went from a sinkhole at Mosby Drive to immediately going into 2 years ago, a sinkhole appearing on Manassas Drive on a smaller culvert. So going into this year, our number one goal was to get these corrugated metal culverts that were in bad condition reconditioned, and we did that. We successfully reconditioned all 4 barrels of the Railroad Drive culverts, and Russia Branch at Manassas Drive has been awarded. But that really took a lot of time away from staff's ability to focus on water projects. Yes, we have the AMI smart meter implementation. It's well underway. The materials are ordered. We have regular, weekly update meetings with Veolia, with the company that's installing this, that's heading this project. That is coming off well, but we also had bigger goals for water capital projects. We wanted to be farther along with the Phase 6 water improvements. We wanted to be farther along with our water tank rehab project. We wanted to be farther along with our valve replacement project. But really, throughput was the issue here. And in the organizational restructuring, you saw that there is a new stormwater program manager, and that stormwater program manager could have been that guy, could have been that person heading up the reconditioning of these culverts, focusing on getting those projects done while your city engineer, Alan Rowley, worked on getting these AMI smart meter projects, the Phase 6 water system improvements, the tank rehabilitation and all of that. Could have gotten all those projects rolling, but it's really a throughput issue, limited staff, and I never think it's a bad idea to limit focus. It's really hard to constantly change gears, and having that stormwater manager, that stormwater program manager, would really do wonders to moving along our stormwater projects. And it would also free up Alan Rowley to be that water sewer program manager to really make sure we're always progressing on these water sewer projects. Upper Kent construction is likely going to be complete in FY23, and Connor Drive extension is well underway with a fall FY24 target date completion. The VRE parking garage is awarded. A lot of resurfacing activities have already been completed this year. We're already looking to come back and try to get some more paving done in FY23. A lot of transportation success, and that's another reason for taking another look at the organizational structure. This model with having a transportation program manager has really been beneficial to the city, not just with moving projects along that weren't moving along quickly, but with also achieving a lot of grant money, and we'll talk more about that later. But that's the success of that transportation program manager model. Really makes it sort of obvious that we should give it a whirl on that stormwater program manager model. The fire station HVAC replacement, the apparatus bay exhaust removal system, parking lot resurfacing, and the bay door replacement are all in various stages of in process. I think the HVAC replacement had some hiccups at first, but we're really starting to work through those. I would say that project, is really wrapping up, and we're finally starting to get even temperatures throughout the building. We're really starting to understand what one or two lingering issues may actually be. The apparatus bay exhaust, we've brought that to you guys for approval. We're working on getting that agreement signed and started. And again, these are the types of things that have really had to been parsed out to other staff. But going into 24 with the deputy facilities manager, I think you'll see the capital projects on the facility side will be able to move faster. The police station leak repair design and specifications, again, that's Kenny and I have been splitting that load, trying to stay on top of that design specification issue. But it's really good that we finally have a deputy facilities manager, someone that can sort of be out in the field handling the fires, the emergencies, while Kenny's really freed up to focus on these capital projects. So the staff have been hired and the materials ordered for the no commercial vehicle sign installation project. I know that's very exciting for everybody. That's really good news that that's going to start moving. I actually had a training session on the Asset Essentials software with those new hires on Friday, and we're getting ready to start that project as soon as materials come in. But that's those new employees, that successful recruitment is really moving along some things that have been stalled in the water for a while, and FY24 is really looking up. Major milestones and accomplishments. You know, we did issue occupancy to City Hall in the very first residential village units there. That was a big accomplishment all around for not just development services staff, but public works staff, facility staff, management staff, the entire city. Those were big accomplishments for us. Moving into that City Hall was a big deal. The Palisades residential bond release, you know, that project has just been sort of sitting there lingering, and we bought the bond, the development permit renewal before the governing body, probably 2 or 3 too many times. Everybody just wanted to see that wrapped up. But, you know, we're not beyond the development phase. We're still deep in the development phase, and we still need to look to keep staffing that planning and zoning department and keep staffing, you know, keep looking for that building official because we issued 4 development permits all of a sudden in the fall of 22. Development has not slowed. I'm a little surprised. It's sort of a Northern Virginia specialty here. I'm hearing stories on the news of housing slowdowns in other places, but it really hasn't hit here. We're still seeing a steady stream of new zoning applications, new building permits. We had a surprise EPA inspection of the stormwater program. It only yielded 6 comments, and most of those, I think all of those really would fall into a clerical or administrative category. They didn't have any negative comments about our program in general. They had some issues with, I guess, the charts and graphs, the tables we had in our reports not carrying all of the information that's required under our permit, but almost all of the comments were along those lines. Nothing about our program, nothing about the way our guys are inspecting sites, nothing about the way we're maintaining BMPs. That was very good news. But that essentially stole my engineering services manager for about a month. And, you know, that's another reason we need that stormwater program manager, because we probably lost 30 to 45 days of focus on capital projects in both water and sewer and stormwater because of that surprise EPA inspection and just the time it took for Alan to put that data together that they were requesting and then meet them on site for those inspections. Back to that transportation program manager model and why we believe that this stormwater program manager position could really, really, really work. $30 million in local, regional, and state grant awards since the new transportation program manager began about 22 months ago. And that is including Route 28, the innovative intersections, but I'm okay with that. We as a city took the lead on submitting the first round of smart scale application. We didn't get the money. We submitted the second round of smart scale application, breaking it up into phases. And then VDOT took our phased approach and all the work that Steve did to do that smart scale application and turned it into a VDOT request, a Northern Virginia request to fund a project. So I give Steve the credit for that VDOT funded project because it was his push and his legwork that made it possible. So yes, that $30 million does include the innovative intersections project, but that's okay to me. And I think you might see this number jump up to about 37 million in a month or so when we find out if we get awarded on the garage, the remainder of the garage funding. The active transportation plan, the bike ped network, Park Central complete streets, the no commercial parking sign, highway safety and improvement program for Manassas Drive studies were all completed in FY23, and we're getting ready to start work on some of those in FY23. A lot of that work will be in FY24. But again, look at the volume of work that has really picked up on the transportation side. We need that same level of focus and effort on the stormwater side so we can get through these TMDL reduction projects, get beyond some of these failing corrugated metal culvert issues, some of these corrugated metal conveyance pipe issues. We really need that same level of focus in stormwater. And finally, just to sum up, just to wrap up these major milestones and accomplishments, we were ahead of the game. We brought our paving recommendations in the fall of this year. Branscombe could not meet our schedule to get this paving done in the fall, but they got it done as soon as they could this spring. We paved West Carondelet. We paved Crozet, Runyon, a number of streets, Greenshire. We paved all of those streets, and we already have some savings to come back and look at doing some more work. And then a whole bunch of projects just sort of got thrown on Steve at the beginning of in the summer, beginning of the fall. We were actually able to pull off a West Carondelet parking sign study, a school crossing and turn lane project that was very fast paced that the school resource officers wanted before school started. And we did that because we were staffed in streets, because the superintendent was working so well with your transportation program manager, because your transportation program manager is working so well with your street supervisor. And all of these things, these capital project highlights, these milestones and accomplishments are all support for the organizational structure change and the new positions that we're requesting in FY24.
That was incredible. Thank you, Calvin. Any comments or questions? Yeah? Do you have a comment?
Hey, good evening, Calvin. I guess my question is the VRE parking garage. Remind me, are we paying Novak a monthly fee, or is that the VRE pays that electric bill, or who's paying the electric bill for that?
For the VRE garage, who will pay the Novak service?
Correct.
Yeah, that should be VRE, unless there's a shared agreement. Laszlo may know more about the agreement we have with them. I'm not familiar with any agreement yet on how we'll split the utilities, but we do own a portion of the parking garage, or we'll control a portion of the parking garage. They will control the majority of it.
Okay, yeah, right. So I was just wondering if is that included? Well, I guess the question to the city manager, was that included in the city?
I don't remember exactly with utilities, but there's a shared maintenance agreement. So I think it makes sense that we would cover the portion of our garage for utility services, whether it's power or other things for that level. Right. And then in the long run, the VRE and the city have to keep doing analysis of who's actually using the garage. And if it's determined that it's more city downtown users, then our share of kind of those maintenance costs would go up. But I'd have to go back and look at that agreement, but I'm almost certain that it would include power as well, at least for our level right now.
But that won't affect anything for FY24, would it?
Not for 24. The garage project should be done sometime in fall of 2024, which would be fiscal year 25, if everything works out perfect.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Question back to Calvin. I was looking at the budget book and saw a lot of overtime for, I guess, from the street maintenance and the snow maintenance, almost between both of them, almost 100,000. Is that, if people working the snow days, are we paying them like a time and a half or extended hours on that day? What can we do to curb that overtime, less than 6 digits almost, 6 figures?
So we always have to have on-call staff, and I think that's sort of overlooked. We will always have some overtime. We will always have some time and a half because of we need on-call staff. We regularly get called out in the middle of the night for sewer issues, sewer backups, water issues, lack of water service at a house, someone noticing water pumping up through the street on a water break. There are always things that are calling us out in the middle of the night. We will always have that on-call program. We could not serve the residents without that on-call program. But a lot of the overtime this year was really driven by some of these surprise projects, these surprise streets projects that popped up in the summer and the fall. We were working a lot of hours doing sign installation. If you remember, we were trying to get the speed zone projects completed. So the streets crew was really out there, focused a lot of the time just on installing signs. And then we really wanted to work with the school resource officers in the schools to get some of these school crossing improvements in place, to get that turn lane modification done so that we weren't always using school resource officer to direct traffic in the morning. That drove a lot of your streets over time, but to be honest, whether we have a really bad winter or not, you're always going to see snow over time, because we have to err on the side of caution. And we do have to keep a few guys around, even if they just are going to go out there and salt the roads one time. Even if they don't have to put a plow blade to the pavement, they're still going to have to throw salt and treat the roads. We're still going to have guys that are working in the middle of the night, that are working in the early morning hours to try to get the streets back in condition for the next working day. You're always going to have some amount of snow over time. That's almost unavoidable. But the real surprise this year was, we didn't have a really, really cold winter, but we did have a lot of temperature shifts. We had a lot of water breaks. And when we're fixing 3 to 4 water breaks, at a time, we're all hands on deck. And those guys usually have already worked a full day. And then you're keeping your entire crew sometimes till 3 or 4 in the morning. So a lot of overtime gets incurred on water breaks. And I think, people don't see that much. It's only sort of in one half of the city where people ever see anyone out doing a water break repair. But there were plenty of times this past winter where we were doing 2 and 3 water break repairs starting at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and not leaving this city until 3 or 4 in the morning. So I think we always work to curb the overtime. That's actively something that the superintendent and the supervisors look at. But we do need to, we are talking about emergencies here.
Right.
So,
well, my follow-up question to that is, do you think it would be best for the department to hire staffing just for those overnight? So you don't have your FTEs that working 15 to 18-hour shifts, that you have a separate crew just for the overnight emergencies?
well, but then you would be counting on sort of somebody in, what's the term that attorneys use? Some sort of a retainer type situation where you don't know when your emergencies are going to pop up. You never know when you're going to need them. You just want somebody sitting around waiting for you to call them. That's not really the kind of employment that most people are looking for. Most of the people, they either want a full-time daytime job or they want a part-time job that's just in the evenings, but it's guaranteed hours, a fixed schedule that they can adjust around their family life. It's really hard to come up with a program where somebody's is just sitting there waiting for an emergency so that you don't have to pay them overtime. It's a tough sell on the recruitment side.
But the part-time staff, the seasonal staff, hopefully we can hire them. They could at least help with like the events stuff, right? That is some overtime as well. So there are some things they can help out. But to Calvin's point, there's going to be a water break. You want your main crew there. You're not going to rely on part-time crew for most of the emergency after-hour items that Public Works does.
No, I understand. I was just worried about those long shifts they do, and it's tiresome mentally and physically on the body. But moving on, the last question is the mowing contract. Do we add an FY24 the additional spaces, the islands and the medians? That's already in the
Yeah, and City Hall as well, around City Hall.
Yeah. That's it.
Comments or questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Calvin, I want to thank your staff for coming out and helping us on Saturday. You know, those men, there was 3 trucks, and they came early to greet us, and heck, they beat us before we got back, so please tell them thank you.
Will do.
Okay, comments or questions? Okay. Calvin, I have a question about the $900 boot allowance. Does that cover part or all of the boots for the workers?
That covers all of their boots. Boots have gotten, they are required to wear steel-toed boots, and I myself am a bit taken aback, but it's not only in my Public Works division, but my Development Services division. Steel-toed boots are expensive.
Yes, they are.
And we have had to constantly raise that line item because the guys will burn through more than one pair of boots in a year.
Okay.
But steel-toed work boots, it is hard to find a set of steel-toed work boots that are going to last for anything less than $200, and it's a real challenge these days. These guys, if they've tried buying some of the cheaper, $100, $130 boots, and they just wind up, the soles fall off of them, they don't hold up. These guys are wearing those things every single day. They're wearing them sometimes, as we just discussed with Councilmember Javed, sometimes they're wearing them for 15 to 18 straight hours. They're getting them wet and muddy. These kinds of, the boots they take a beating. And, we actually are to the point we encourage them to buy a little better quality boot so that they will hold up, so that we don't wind up buying 3 or 4 pair of boots in a year. But yes, it does seem like a lot, but I keep my eye on those credit card purchases, and I keep an eye on the boot purchases, because I can always tell quickly from the credit card system when there's a boot purchase. And the guys are pretty good about, shopping around, trying to find a good deal. But they are very expensive. A good steel-toed work boot is quite expensive.
Yeah, no, actually, I didn't think it was too much. I know that when you go to look for a good boot, a comfortable boot, it's very pricey. And I'm glad to hear that we pay for all of the boot, because I think that's the least we can do for our workers. So thank you, Calvin. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Calvin.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so the last portion of tonight's budget presentation, this should be pretty quick. So you guys asked to make some changes to the budget that I presented. Here's a summary kind of the cost breakdown of the 2 proposals. So the first one was tax rate reduction to 1.43, down from 1.435 that I presented. That costs about $117,000 in tax savings to residents, but costs in less revenues for the city in FY24, and then $1.3 million in tax savings to our residents over 10 years. So $1.3 million total impact over the 10-year model for the updated tax rate reduction. And then for the updated salary increases, we went from 4.4% to 6%. In FY24, that cost roughly $256,000 more in salary and benefit costs, and then $2.6 million more over 10 years. So combined, these 2 proposals are roughly $3.9 million in costs to the city, either less revenue or more expenditures. So to offset that, there's two things that we did. One of them we got lucky. The first one, though, was a reserve reduction, right? So to balance the budget, we reduced the contributions by about $200,000 in '24, so down from $941 to $731,000, and then that's $2.258 million less in contributions to reserves over the 10 years. But I'll show you what reserves looks like. It's not a bad story, because there was actually a capital budget error that actually helped us with our reserves. And then luckily, remember Randy briefed you guys last week that the state came through with significant salary increases for DSS. So previously, the city was paying for the full salary increases for DSS. By us doing a 7% increase for DSS employees, we only had to pay 15% of that. So that was a significant amount of revenue for for the city. So it's about $147,000 in additional state revenue in FY24 if we do the 7% salary increases. So to me, it's a no-brainer. We get additional state money, and we help pay our DSS employees, and that's about 1.68 million more in revenues over 10 years for Department of Social Services. So the big question is reserves. That's the big concern, but I'll go over that over the next few slides for why I think we're still in a good position. But the moral of this story is that we can actually do your reform, the changes that you guys want to make to the budget. It is absolutely financially feasible. So this was the reserve slide that I showed you guys when I did my presentation. You can see we were about there, right? We reached our target levels for reserves. We were just about $42,000 shy, but we all know with the annual surpluses, we probably get there a lot quicker than that. So I think we have a few $1 million of cushion here to play with. However, I made an error in FY32. I kept the Blooms Park Trails project. That's from the original submission. We had it there for the resurfacing in 32, but I moved it up using ARPA funding, but I forgot to delete this in FY32. So that got to go back into reserve. So in reality, reserves from the original model was $1.8 million positive. That's too much money going to reserves. So we had some cushion to play with. So now the updated number through the new proposal of the extra half penny reduction in taxes for our residents and the additional salary increases, we're only down about $513,000. But again, reminder of all the surpluses we've achieved that are unplanned. We'll get there. We'll get to the target. I feel comfortable with this. I would say try not to go more than -2 million, -3 million. I think that would be a little bit worrisome, but I think with the surpluses that we're achieving regardless, we're going to get to our model goals between planning the annual plan reserve contributions and our annual surpluses. So that's all I have for you tonight.
Oh, thank you, Laszlo. I am thrilled that we can provide 6% for staffers, and I'm also thrilled about the 2-cent tax reduction. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for the work that you did on this. Comments or questions?
What is the breakdown for the 6%? So the COLA and the actual base salary?
It's just purely a COLA. So inflation last year was about 6.5%.
Yeah.
So this is really to help offset inflation. Last year we did market.
The 6% is actually towards their base salary?
Yeah, towards their base salary, yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Comments or questions?
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Except bravo. Okay. Do you have anything further for the budget?
I don't, no.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, city manager's report.
Nothing to report tonight, just an echo everything you guys already said in terms of thanking all the employees for this past weekend. There was a lot of events going on, and I think a lot of the employees did a good job in putting that together. So.
Yeah, super, thank you. Okay, we have no closed session. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Did you hear anything about the tryouts at the fire department?
I did not. I'll check with Chief Soper, though.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have one other question. When is the city council poster coming?
That's the budget we're developing. I think, did we have to do one more? We had to do a budget presentation, that's right, for you all. I think May 1st, or are we scheduled for that, or we still have some more work to do?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we had to present a budget for you all about what it's going to cost to do all the things that they priced everything out.
you.
Okay, including the extra 3,000 for the extra, so that we can have two dumpers at one on each side of the city for the cardboard?
No, we're talking about right now, you mean like the list of all the
Whatever
former
the
council
artwork,
members,
yeah, and-
the mayors, the
All that
glass
would
for the
be-
historical. So that's kind of like more the internal city hall
Okay.
decorations.
Yeah.
But that does bring up a good point about, I think you guys should get consensus about the dumpsters, so you can let me know about that at the budget.
Well, I think we should go on both, and we're actually part of Keep the Park Beautiful. We're actually, Yvette is actually working on some grants, so that perhaps if we get the grant money, that can possibly offset some of that cost. I mean, it's only $500 to $1,000 the grant, but it'll offset it, so you gotta serve both sides, so
Yeah.
my philosophy is having on both sides and have the other one at Costello Park. There's plenty of parking over
Both sides
there.
is a good idea.
Yeah.
And if we watch out for the pennies, the dollars take care of themselves.
Right.
Councilmember Carrera.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Councilmember Amaya? Yes, okay. Yes?
Both sides.
Both
Yeah, I would
sides.
do.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Where would the other one, you said Costello Park?
We would have to evaluate that, but I'll meet with Jay and Calvin and we'll make a determination of where.
See
But
if
Costello
there's-
Park makes the most sense
See if
right
there's
now.
space, I don't know, it might be helpful or not near the police station. If
Yeah,
there's space down there.
yeah, I think we'll
Evaluate it,
evaluate
bring
it.
it back.
and- Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
They'll figure out just the right place.
place,
Yeah, okay. No closed meeting. Is there anything for the good of the city that we haven't already talked about? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Keep the room warm.
That's because you're not wearing. You're not. Exactly.